name is Conrad Berube. I am the Executive Director of Bees for Babar. Beginning in late February of 2012, I spent 6 weeks in northern rural Ghana conducting beekeeping training as part of the apicultural development project Bees for Babar. The great majority of that time was spent in the small village of Magnore, a village of about 600 people that borders the largest wildlife reserve in Ghana, Mole Park. Wildlife in the area draws in tourist dollars, but can also present conflicts with human activities. As our project charter commits that all contributions from private donors will go directly to assist our Ghanaian client group, I am grateful to the USAID Farmer-to-Farmer program, administered by Partners of the Americas, for covering my travel and living expenses during this trip. Ghana, like most parts of Africa, has healthy populations of native races of honeybees, which provide a ready resource for folks who would like to go beyond traditional honey hunting practices. You'll note that some of these combs have been abandoned, possibly because they've become infested with ants or other pests. These empty combs may become reoccupied and repaired when one of the adjoining colonies throws off a reproductive swarm. You'll also notice that these combs don't have any outer covering, as do wasp nests. The paper-covered, football-shaped nests that you see in cartoons, often being raided by characters like Winnie the Pooh, are actually wasp nests and contain no honey. Wasps and yellowjackets construct horizontal, one-faced combs from pulp collected from rotting wood and leaves, whereas, as you can see here, the combs of honeybees have two faces and are constructed in a vertical array. The combs are constructed from wax secreted from glands in the bodies of worker bees. The wax is produced in small scales, 6 at a time, on paired glands on the underside of the workers' abdomens. The workers then transfer the scales to their mouths, chew it, and then form it into these beautiful wax panels that are used both for the storage of honey and pollen and for the rearing of brood. Honey and pollen, stored at the outside of the nest, as well as the clustering bodies of the workers, help to keep the brood at the center of the nest at a constant temperature, which is only a few degrees cooler than normal human body temperature. The wild nests, shown here, were all in a single baobob tree. It is easy to imagine how the honey in such nests would represent a great temptation to the wide array of other insects, birds, and mammals on the continent which have been known to harass the bees for their sweet stores. Because there are far more such marauding pests in the tropics than in temperate zones, African races of bees are much more defensive than their conspecifics adapted to the temperate zone. Traditional honey hunting is conducted at night because bees will not normally fly then, except towards the torches that are used both for light and to drive off or kill the bees enveloping their combs. In Ghana, traditional harvesting is called tapping. During such tapping, all comb is removed from the nest, including those combs that contain brood cells, such as those shown here, or cells that contain primarily pollen, such as these. Traditionally tapped honey is extracted by setting hot charcoal on top of the combs robbed from wild nests. The warmed honey flows through perforated metal plates and is then collected from beneath. It has a smoky, even burned flavor, which cannot be removed with any amount of filtering. The remains of such heat-extracted combs, like these, are simply discarded. The inclusion of combs that contain larvae or pollen will further reduce the quality of the honey. Storage and bottling of the harvested wild honey is as rustic as the harvesting techniques themselves. It was pretty obvious that some improvements could be made to wild honey collection to improve the quality and hygiene, and therefore increase the value of the final product. It was gratifying that this honey hunter showed up for the training course we provided, and I hope he begins to employ some of the techniques we offered, at least to close up the holes in his storage jug so the bees don't just take back the honey he harvested. One of the first steps in successful bee culture is reducing the number of sting incidents. This can be accomplished through practices that reduce disturbances to bees, make oneself less of a target to the bees, or simply conduct management away from the bees entirely. In this training exercise, participants place the blade of grass down their backs to represent a harassing bee. They then set off to make their way through vegetation with their hands loosely covering their eyes to try to dislodge their grass stems in the same way that would be used to evade pursuing bees. The idea is to use vegetation both as cover and to physically brush away any pursuers. You can see that the participants were fairly effective at hiding themselves away in the nearby brush until they were called back to the lecture pavilion. The ferocity of the local bees can also be used to the farmer's advantage. Hives can be deployed on tripwires. When elephants attempt to raid crops, they will upset the tripwired hives. The bees will then drive off the elephants, preserving both the crops and the elephants, who might otherwise be poached by the enraged farmers. To avoid themselves becoming the target for such disturbed bees, beekeepers can use smoke to pacify the bees before they begin working, and to mask their odors so they are less easily located by the upset insects. Fuel should be chosen that produces a cool, white, relatively odorless smoke, such as that produced from corn cobs, which can be easily gathered in the field, particularly with the assistance of local schoolboys. Smoking the bees will induce them to eat honey, which would assist them in escaping from a wildfire if that were the provenance of the smoke. Once tanked up on honey, in the absence of fire, the bees are less likely to leave the comb to sting the beekeeper. In addition, distended with honey, they are less able to get their abdomens bent into the position to successfully sting. The smoker should be well stoked and the fuel fully combusting to ensure that one does not run out of one's protective fumes in the middle of a hive revision. Smoke any exposed skin, especially the hands and the face, even if you're planning on wearing a veil and gloves. This will reduce the number of stings you receive if bees happen to get inside your veil or inside your protective jacket. The entrance to the hive and any other openings should be smoked a few minutes before opening the box to ensure that the bees have had plenty of time to begin eating honey. As important as it is to make sure that one's smoker is well lit before beginning revisions, is to ensure that afterwards embers are disposed of properly to prevent bushfires. The fuel can be buried, as shown here, or, where fuel is precious, which is most of West Africa, the embers can be dumped into a nearby cook stove for full use. The terrain around Magnory is primarily bushy lowlands, with much of the land in the immediate proximity of the village waterlogged for much of the rainy season. Such areas are amenable for beekeeping both because it provides a use for land that would not otherwise be productive, and because it provides ample space for apiaries. In addition, beekeeping is an income-generating activity that is compatible with the conservation goals of the wildlife reserve. In many parts of Ghana, shaded, uncultivated land is at a premium. These hives are nicely spaced, with at least 2 meters between them, which will prevent the management problems caused by crowded hives, where alarm pheromone can pass from a disturbed colony to another, upsetting an entire apiary. The mud daubed along this hive stand and upon the body of this Kenya top bar hive are indicative of termites. To prevent damage from these wood-destroying insects, the legs of the hive stands can be placed in receptacles of used motor oil. A slightly more expensive alternative is to make the hive stands out of metal. The trapezoidal cross-section of the Kenya top bar hive allows the bees to maintain the natural form of their comb. These combs should always be held in a vertical plane to prevent breakage. Hanging hives provide some protection against invading ants, termites, and to some extent, bushfires. Providing the hive with stretcher-like handles makes it very easy to hang or carry the hive. These top bars are cut with a ridge running along their length to provide a guide to the bees so that they do not construct their comb crosswise to the top bars. For more information, search YouTube or Google for 2012 Bees for Babar Progress Report, or visit beesforbabar.org. Thanks for watching.